Hi, and welcome to Nini's house. Today we're going to be in the craft room. If you have watched any of my thrifting videos, then you probably know that I have a couple of cutter quilts in my stash, and today I'm going to use this beautiful one that is made up of brown, beige, and blue fabric, and I'm going to use it to make a pumpkin. It has a lot of stains on it and some tears, and it's just not in a very good condition, and that's why it's called a cutter quilt. And cutter quilts are usually very cheap, less than $15 or $20. To begin, we need a large circle of fabric, and the easiest way to draw a large circle for me is to use a string and a pencil, and I'm going to demonstrate that here on my piece of newspaper. You want to tie your string to your pencil and then measure half of the diameter of the circle that you want to draw. Place the string there under your finger and then twirl the pencil around until you have a complete circle. And that will give you the correct size. And then you cut your fabric out on the line that you just drew. Here is my cutout circle from the quilt. It is 16 inches in diameter. The next thing that we'll need is some heavy string. You can use embroidery thread if you have it. I'm going to use some baker's twine because I have a lot of this that I need to use up. And you're going to need a piece of thread or twine, whatever you're using, about 3.5 to 4 times the diameter of your circle. We're going to do some hand sewing, so of course we're going to need a needle, and I'm going to use a really big needle in order to get through this quilt because it is multiple layers of fabric and batting, and the thread is also really thick, so I need a big eye on my needle. Once we have our needle threaded, we're going to just make a basting stitch all the way around the outside of the circle, about a ½ inch in from the edge, and my stitch is going to be about a ½ inch, I believe. It's not necessary that it is equal. A very loose stitch is fine. The stitch length will just determine how tightly the fabric is gathered. Be careful not to pull your thread all the way through the fabric. You want to leave a tail of about 4 or 5 inches to use to pull the gathers when we get through sewing all the way around. Now we're coming to the end of our circle. You can see the little tail that I left at the beginning, and I'm also going to have one here at the end. These strings are what we will use to pull tight to make the gathers that will pull our fabric into a ball. And because this quilted fabric is very dense and heavy, it is going to take quite a bit of effort to pull the strings tight enough to gather this into a pumpkin shape. As you'll notice, I pull on one string for a little while, then switch to the other string to try to keep the gathers even all the way around. This is not gathered nearly tight enough, but it's as much as I can do right now. So I am going to just tie it off and begin stuffing my pumpkin, and I will work on gathering it tighter after I have it stuffed. And you'll notice I did not knot the thread, I just tied a bow because I will need to untie it later and tighten it up some more. Once I got my pumpkin stuffed as full as I wanted it, I tried to pull the strings tighter to make the opening smaller, but I just was not strong enough to do so. So I'm going to use my needle and thread to help pull that opening closed. And this time I am going to knot my thread because I don't want to pull it all the way through. And I'm going to just crisscross back and forth from one side to the other until I can pull that opening closed as much as possible. And here's where I finally got to. That's as small as I can possibly get it, but I think that once I get it decorated, the opening won't show at all. Now I'm going to show you how I made one using just a regular piece of polycotton blend fabric. It was much easier to do. This is a piece of fabric that I picked up at a garage sale. I thought it looked very fallish, and so I'm also going to make one pumpkin out of this fabric. I drew my circle directly onto the fabric and cut it out. Once again, I'm going to measure my string about 4 times the diameter of the fabric and thread my needle. I'm going still using this big needle because it's the one that I have available, but for a polycotton blend like this, a thinner fabric, you could use embroidery thread and a regular needle as long as your thread can fit through the eye of the needle. And I'm just going to make the running basting stitch around the edge of the circle, just as I did on the quilted fabric, only it's going to go a lot faster and a lot easier this time. Now I've gone all the way around the edge of the fabric, and I've left my little tails as before so that I can pull up the gathers and make my pumpkin shape. You will see that it is so much easier to do this time, and I can pull the gathers really tight so that I have only a small opening. In fact, this time I have to go back and open it up a little bit so that I can get my hand in there to add the stuffing. When I have it stuffed as full as I'd like, I'm going to pull the threads tight again to close up the top, leaving only about 1 inch, 1.5 inch opening for the stem. And then I am going to tie the strings tightly so that it won't open back up again. Here is our quilted pumpkin, and here is our fabric pumpkin. Now it's time to add the stems and other embellishments. For the stems, I just chose a stick that I found out in the backyard. It had been burnt on both ends, which I thought was pretty cool. I had my husband just saw it in half for me, and I'm going to use 1/2 for each pumpkin. I also have some things from my stash and a couple of things that I picked up at the Dollar Tree. These yellow willow branches and these fall leaves that I'm going to use to decorate the pumpkins with. I also got these little mushrooms. I think they're really cute. I don't know if I'll be able to use them or not on the pumpkins, but I'll be able to use them for something. In my stash, I have some twine, some gold wire, and some gold ribbon. I also have some narrow burgundy ribbon and some wider sheer burgundy ribbon. Here is my box of lace, and I think we can probably find some things in here to use. This is a piece of old crochet. Here's some tea-stained lace. This is a pretty ruffled lace. I think I can use that. And I like this cotton lace. So I think I will see if I can use one of those pieces. Here is my box of vintage doilies and other crochet pieces, and I think I'll look through here and see if there's something that I can use. These would all probably look nice, but I would have to cut a hole in them to fit over the stem, and I don't think I want to do that. So I'm just going to try to use the lace that I've already picked out. Let's see what we can do with the quilted pumpkin first. The first thing I need to decide is if I want to use the twine or the gold ribbon to tie around the pumpkin. And then I need to decide which lace looks best on this pumpkin and with which ribbon. After you see all of the options, I hope you'll let me know in the comments if you think I made the right choices or what you might have done differently. So now I'm really thinking that I like the twine better for this pumpkin. I like a more natural look. And I really love that crocheted lace, but it's too thin to use by itself, so maybe I should double up. While I think about it, I'm going to go ahead and tie the twine around the pumpkin. I'm using the twine to make the indentions that we normally see on a pumpkin, and I'm just going to knot it and leave some string hanging because I want them to look sort of like the tendrils that we see on a pumpkin. I'm going to do this 3 times, and I will show you on the bottom of the pumpkin what it looks like and how it's equally divided down there. I'm not sure if I like all of these strings hanging down, but for now I'm going to leave them. And here's what the bottom of the pumpkin looks like. And you can adjust the strings if you need to make the sections more equal. I've decided that I am going to use this flat cotton lace, but it really needs to be gathered in order to fit around the stem nicely. So I will have to do that with a needle and thread, just like I gathered up the fabric to make the pumpkin. I'll gather up the lace to make a circle to fit around the stem. I am going to use embroidery thread this time. I'm still going to use my big needle because it's right here and that's convenient. I'm making a knot on the end so that my thread won't pull all the way through. And then I'm just going to make a running basting stitch like we did around the circle of fabric. When we get here to the end, we're just going to pull our thread tightly and it's going to make a circle all on its own. And it's just the perfect size for our pumpkin. I could stitch the edges together, but I think I'll just hot glue them down when I attach the lace to the pumpkin. And that opening is exactly perfect for our stem. I think it's looking great. Now that I have the stem positioned exactly where I want it, I'm going to put some hot glue around the base to make sure that it doesn't move. I'm going to tighten up the string on the lace and tie the end off so that it won't come undone. Now I'll slip it right over the stem of the pumpkin, and as you can see, it covers the opening well, and you can't even tell how big the opening was. I'm going to add some hot glue in dabs just around the base of the stem to hold the lace in place. And I'm going to close up the joint of the lace with a little bit of hot glue too. Now to add a few more embellishments, I'm going to start with the fall leaves. When I saw these in the store, I really thought the brown ones might go well with the pumpkin. And I really do like how it looks, so I'm definitely going to use at least one brown one. But I think it needs a little more color, so I'm going to use one of these little golden orange ones in addition to the brown one. And once I decide on the correct placement, I'm just going to hot glue them in place. Those little wooden mushrooms that I got at the Dollar Tree are so cute. I really would like to use them somehow, but they're just too big to work here on the top of my pumpkin. What would really be cute would be some acorns. I don't have any in my craft room. Maybe I could find some out in the yard and add them to my pumpkin later. Now I'm going to use this gold wire When I was a florist, we used to use this all the time when we were making corsages, especially. But it was a heavier wire, so I'm not sure how this one will do. I'm going to try it and see. What we would do is coil it around a pencil and make what sort of look like a spring. I'm going to make 2 or 3 different sizes, different lengths, and see which looks best. I will probably use more than one. I've decided to use 2 in 2 different lengths, and of course I'm just hot gluing them in place like everything else. The wire is very easily manipulated, so you can pull the spring out to make it looser or push it in to make it tighter. You can bend them all which ways to get them exactly how you like them. And here is my finished pumpkin. I think maybe if you used a curling iron, you could curl those pieces of twine that are hanging down, or you could just cut them off if you don't like them. Here is the fabric pumpkin, and I wanted to show you how I decided to finish it off. I used the gold ribbon to tie it. I also used that pretty ruffled lace around the top, but I decided to cut off the bottom layer of the lace because it was just too much. I also used the sheer burgundy ribbon to make a bow, and I used some of the yellow willow from the Dollar Tree on each side of the stem. Here are my 2 finished pumpkins. I hope that you like them and that you found this video helpful. If you have any questions, please ask them in the comment section below, and I will be happy to answer them or to explain something further. Here is our backyard. As you can see, we have an abundance of trees, which means plenty of sticks on the ground. Hopefully you can find some nice sticks to add to your pumpkins. Thanks so much for watching.